why I don't consider players like Paul Scholes and Michael Carrick as defensive midfielders, what has impressed me about Casemiro's performances at this World Cup, why Casemiro should be trying to emulate this Argentine and this German at this World Cup, and do I think that Casemiro is the greatest defensive midfielder of all time, and if not him, who do I actually think it is? All of that will be coming up in this video. But before I go any further, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access hides your IP address and encrypts your internet connection. It works with all major streaming services, including BBC iPlayer and ITV, from wherever you are in the world. I'm currently in Spain and so I cannot watch those channels. However, with Private Internet Access, I can with the click of a button, setting my location to the UK, from where I can then watch the World Cup matches completely for free with perfect quality. And so Private Internet Access has become essential for me during this World Cup. Private Internet Access is offering Atlantis Football subscribers 4 extra months completely free when you sign up for a 2-year deal. That's 4 completely free extra months on a 2-year deal. So even after the World Cup, you can still enjoy all the benefits that come with Private Internet Access and save money at the same time. The link will be left in the description below for you to get Private Internet Access now. And of course, a big thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring today's video. A link will be left in both the description and the comment section below for you to click at the end of this video. So currently at the World Cup, Manchester United have a few players who can really establish themselves as legends of the game with a fantastic tournament. I did a video on Lisandro Martinez a while back, and that will be linked in the description below for you to check out after this video. But another player who I am looking forward to seeing more at this tournament as it goes on is Casemiro. The Brazilian is arguably United's only true world-class player at the moment, with maybe Bruno Fernandes also in that category, as David De Gea and Rafael Varane in my opinion have just fallen out of that category over the past few seasons. But even still, I think that most people would agree that Casemiro is one of the best defensive midfielders in the world, and in my opinion he's a contender for being the greatest defensive midfielder of all time. But who else would be in contention? Well, first of all, let's actually define what I mean by a defensive midfielder. See, I think many confuse a defensive midfielder with a deeper lying midfielder and conflate the two into one category. The reason I put a distinction between the two is that just because a player, a midfielder specifically, operates in a deeper part of the pitch doesn't necessarily make them defensive. A perfect example is Andrea Pirlo, who made his name playing at the base of the midfield, whether this be in Ancelotti's midfield diamond or Christmas tree or Antonio Conte's 5-3-2, with both Juventus and Italy. However, Pirlo was there primarily for his creativity from deep in possession, and often had players alongside him like Gattuso, Seedorf, Ambrosini, Vidal and Marquinhos, to name a few, who were the water carriers in the midfield, there to take the defensive burden off of Pirlo's shoulders. So you can't really consider Pirlo a defensive midfielder, even though he is certainly a deep line playmaker who thrived in that regista role. The same goes for players like Xabi Alonso, Xavi, Redondo and Paul Scholes, who all fall into that same category as Pirlo. Players like Michael Carrick and Sergio Busquets are hybrids really, players who certainly perform their defensive tasks to a very high level, particularly when it came to their reading of the game and ability to intercept and cut off passes, but they weren't what you would refer to as a ball-winning midfielder, not having the same aggression, physicality and tenacious tackling ability that a midfielder like Casemiro has. And so when talking about defensive midfielders in this video, I'm going to take both Carrick and Busquets out, even though I do think both are criminally underrated and deserve to go down in football history with legendary status. I think from this generation both Fernandinho and Kante have a great shout to rival Casemiro as being the best defensive midfielder of this generation, with Arturo Vidal maybe being more of a box-to-box midfielder, but definitely a player who had incredible defensive abilities in the middle of the park. If we are looking at the greatest of all time in that position, however, the three from the Premier League that have to be there for me are Patrick Vieira, Claude Makélélé and Roy Keane. Gennaro Gattuso is another player from the 2000s that has a great shout to be in contention. And then from the 90s you've got Frank Rijkaard, Didier Deschamps and Lothar Matthaus. Now I've probably missed out a few players, so let me know in the comment section below as well. But I think that if Casemiro can continue to have a great World Cup and win the tournament with Brazil, then he has to be close to the top of the list, if not right at the top of the best defensive midfielders of all time. And I do think this is a real possibility, as not only does this Brazil side look to have a lot more balance than previous years, but Casemiro is also an integral piece of this Brazil puzzle. Now a fundamental reason why I'm so confident in Casemiro in this particular World Cup is that generally in international tournaments, the football tends to be a lot more pragmatic than in club football. And so whilst in club football in 2022, press resistant, creative, deep deeper line midfielders are essential, particularly in the World Cup. I think it's defensive midfielders who do become a lot more important. This is because teams tend to sit a bit deeper and not press as aggressively, particularly in the latter stages of the tournament, meaning that the opposition is able to get into your defensive third a lot more often. And so players who have the ability to break up attacks and win the ball back in deeper areas of the pitch tend to stand out a lot more than players who excel at pressing and winning the ball back higher up the pitch. And a great example of this was at the 2014 World Cup, with Javier Mascherano arguably being the best player at the tournament along with Manuel Neuer, despite Messi eventually winning the Player of the Tournament award. Although by this point in his career he had been firmly transitioned into a ball-playing centre-back by Pep Guardiola, and then continuing in that role under Tito Villanova and Gerardo Martino, Alejandro Sabella used Mascherano as a defensive midfielder in a midfield three alongside Lucas Biglia and Enzo Perez, in front of a centre-back pairing of Martin Demichelis and Ezequiel Garay. Mascherano's standout moment in the tournament was without doubt his miraculous last-ditch tackle on Arjen Robben in the semi-final. The ball got moved forward into Robben in behind the Argentine midfield in a central position, and Robben is able to dance past both Argentine centre-backs into a shooting position against Romero in goal, and despite Mascherano starting from behind Robben when he initially received the ball, the former West Ham man is able to make up the ground and put in a tackle to block Robben's shot on goal, saving a goal that would have put the Netherlands ahead and most likely sent Argentina packing at the semi-final stage. However, Mascherano's tackle kept the game level, and from here Argentina would go on to win the game on penalties and book their place in the final against Germany. And I could easily see Casemiro having a similar kind of impact. We know that this Brazil side does have the individual attacking talent ahead of him with Vinicius, Neymar and Rafinha in behind Richarlison, but it's defensively where the Brazilians are traditionally a lot weaker. However, now with Casemiro they have a defensive midfielder who almost on his own can protect the back line, making those sorts of last-ditch game-saving tackles exactly like the one we saw Javier Mascherano make against Arjen Robben. And that could be the eventual difference between Brazil winning the World Cup and getting knocked out in the quarters or the semis. And I think an exceptional World Cup performance may arguably cement Casemiro as the greatest defensive midfielder of all time, although there are a few other contenders who have also excelled at World Cups. Lothar Matthaus is probably the most notable name, being a central midfielder who had the energy and industry to cover the space in the centre of the park when his side didn't have the ball, able to put in crunching tackles and having exceptional reading of the game, allowing him to be a step ahead of everyone else. But unlike defensive midfielders such as Diego Simeone, Gattuso or Claude Makelele, who fundamentally were defensive players first and foremost, Matthaus was also able to combine this with all the other attributes needed to be a legendary box-to-box midfielder, very similar to the likes of Steven Gerrard, Roy Keane and Patrick Vieira, and would be the type of central midfielder who would thrive in the modern game both in and out of possession. Matthaus could burst forward in the final third and provide a goal-scoring threat with his vision and passing around the box, as well as being a threat via his shooting ability, which saw him score a total of 202 goals in 783 total career appearances, which is just over a goal every 4 games, an absolutely phenomenal record for a so-called defensive-minded midfielder. Now, calling Matthaus a defensive midfielder does seem kind of wrong, considering his attacking output. However, as with strikers like Benzema and Kane, who are just as good at creating goals as they are at scoring goals, or fullbacks like João Cancelo and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who offer the attacking output of creative midfielders, Matthaus is a natural defensive midfielder with exceptional offensive ability, rather than an attacking midfielder who also does the defensive side of the game very well. So it might be a bit confusing, but I definitely think that Matthaus does fall into this defensive midfielder category. He would be crucial to Germany's 1990 World Cup victory, facing off against Argentina in the final, who had Diego Maradona, and at that point you'd have to say that Matthaus and Maradona were probably the 2 best players in world football. Now, Casemiro is a slightly different type of defensive midfielder to Matthaus, being much more of a sitting ball winner who, rather than pushing forward in the final third like a box-to-box midfielder would, looking to score and create, he instead sits behind the play looking to use his reading of the game, athleticism, physicality and tackling ability to move across and break up opposition attacks, and essentially protecting the whole system, being the cog in that midfield that stops opposition teams being able to drive through Brazil's centre when there is a turnover. But Casemiro is far from just a ball winner, as his game has developed massively over the past few seasons, with him now being an excellent circulator of the ball, able to break lines with his incisive passes, whilst also switching play with long raking balls as well. And we saw the best of Casemiro both in and out of possession in Brazil's first game of the World Cup against Serbia, lending weight to my argument that this World Cup could be the catalyst for his charge towards being considered as one of the, if not the greatest defensive midfielder of all time. We saw him play a number of fantastic incisive passes, splitting the Serbia midfield line and allowing Brazil to progress the ball into the final third. His passing range was also immaculate, being able to receive the ball in front of Serbia's deep block and switch play with an arrowing pass, looking for a runner in behind down the flank, and even his quick short range passes were very good as well. And to be fair, this is something that we haven't seen much from him in a Manchester United shirt as of yet, as it tends to be Christian Eriksen who United are dependent on when it comes to playing these progressive passes forward from deep positions. But for Brazil against Serbia, Casemiro had the passing ability and overall awareness and vision that we see from deep line playmakers like Eriksen. Against Switzerland, Casemiro's performance was also very impressive, winning the World Cup Man of the Match award, alongside scoring a stunning match-winning goal. He made a great sliding block on the edge of the box from a Swiss shot, whilst also being excellent at breaking up the play in the middle of the pitch as well, and then moving the ball on swiftly to Brazil's attacking midfielders to drive the attack forward. And then obviously his match-winning half volley will, like Richarlison's goal against Serbia, go down as one of the greatest World Cup goals in history. Particularly out of possession, Casemiro has impressed me, showing his tenacious tackling ability that we are all familiar with, and he is arguably the most important player to Tite's Brazil side, as with Rafinha, Neymar and Vinicius and even Anthony Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus and Rodrigo, alongside the impressive Richarlison, Brazil have a plethora of attacking talents. However, with Fernandinho retired and Fabinho seemingly rapidly on the decline from his peak at Liverpool around a season or two ago, Brazil rely heavily on Casemiro to be that defensive battering ram in front of the defensive line. He made a number of fantastic tackles during that Serbia match, and that's what we expect from Casemiro, but it's his on-the-ball ability that seems to have gone to another level, to even what we've seen him do at United this season. So I think I've made a decent case as to why, after this World Cup, if everything goes according to plan, Casemiro could be considered the best defensive midfielder of all time. But at the moment, where would he rank and who would I have at the top of my list? Well, my top 10 in no particular order would be Casemiro, Lothar Matthaus, Frank Rijkaard, Claude Makelele, Roy Keane, N'Golo Kante, Didier Deschamps, Dunga and Patrick Vieira. Now obviously this list is heavily skewed towards more modern players because I've not seen as much from players in the 80s and before like Falcao, Josip Bozic and Graham Souness, so that does have to be taken into account. But to round up the video, if I had to give my top 5 at this point in time, I would have Patrick Vieira in 5th, Frank Rijkaard in 4th, Casemiro in 3rd, Roy Keane in 2nd and Lothar Matthaus as the best defensive midfielder of all time. Though by the time this World Cup has finished, Casemiro may be pushing the German back into 2nd place. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, check out some of my other videos which will be in the description, subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when my videos come out. Put your thoughts on where Casemiro should rank in this list, and check out my Twitter and Instagram for more content as well.